In this video, I'll demonstrate how to construct the so-called Pi-Petal rows. On page 1 of the web sketchpad model that accompanies my blog post, we start with a circle and a radius AB and a point C that travels only along AB. And we ask, what is the path of point C as point B moves around the circle? Now you can imagine this, and after you do, we can actually trace the path of point C to observe it. So here we have the trace widget, and I'll tap on that, and I'll tap on point C to enable tracing for that point. And now when I drag point B, we can see that point C traces a circle. If I'd like to move point C to a new location, I can tap on Erase Traces and briefly disable tracing, move point C, enable tracing again, and drag point B. Moving on now to page 2 of the web sketchpad model. Here we visualize what happens as both point B moves around the circumference of the circle, while point C simultaneously moves back and forth along the radius. If you like, you can trace point C on this page to see the path that it follows. But I'm going to move on to the next page, where here we have the full model, where when I press Animate Points, you'll see point C being traced, and it forms what look like the petals of a flower. And you can think about how many petals point C traces before it begins to retrace roughly those same petals. On the final page of this web sketch, page 4, we're going to make this model from scratch. To do so, I have just a small collection of tools here, and I'll start by constructing a circle. I'll tap the compass tool, and I see a preview of the circle I'm about to construct with its center glowing, indicating that the center needs to be placed. So I'll place the center right there. And now the point on the circumference is glowing, indicating that it needs to be placed. So I'll just tap anywhere, like right here, and my circle is done, and I can adjust its size if I like. Next, I'll construct the radius of the circle using the segment tool. This point that's glowing, I'll match to the center of the circle, and the other endpoint I will match to the circumference of the circle. So now I have a spinning radius. Let's put a point onto the radius. And now what I'd like to do is to animate this point, which we can label with the label widget as point A, and this point as point B. So I would like point A to spin around the circle, while point B simultaneously moves back and forth. And for that we have two kinds of animation tools. One that moves the point A around the circle, which is the Animate Point tool. And then we also have this bidirectional Animate tool, which will move point B back and forth. So let's focus on point A first. I'll use the Animate Point tool, and it shows me this point, which is glowing, indicating that this point will be animated. And I, in particular, would like to merge this point with point A by tapping on point A, so that A is now the point that when I click on Animate Point, gets animated around the circle. And I'll tap again to stop that. Now I would like to create the Animate button that will move B bidirectionally back and forth along this radius. So I'll tap on that tool, and again I'm going to match this point with, in this case, point B. And if I tap on this button, I see it moves B back and forth. So I'm going to want to trace point B. So let's go here to the tracing widget and tap point B to trace it. Let's briefly disable that while I drag B to the center of the circle where it will start. And now I will enable tracing. And I have two animate buttons. And I'm going to start by animating point A. And now let us begin by animating point B. And here we see the Pi-Petal rose construction that was built in full on page 3. How many petals does point B trace?